Rocket ship go now. I am Bobby Ogilvy, and why do I keep looking up there at my old camera? EQ coach and tech executive. So glad to see you guys. I have done live streams before, but this is one of the first at the new place here. And you'll see the setting is a bit different. And eventually we'll be at a more groomed broadcasting studio downstairs. So it'll be different from there. But most of the live streaming I've done in the past has been through Facebook. And so this is my first chance getting to do this through YouTube, or actually I should say using Google Hangouts on air to then live broadcast to YouTube. So this is a first for me. So this is really just straight up experimental. I wonder if there's a way that I can get comments or input from people. Is there a way that anyone is seeing this? Because I would love if this was a thing that I could share with people. I would love if this is a thing that I could share with people. And I'm probably gonna get like a weird, oh, there's like a lag. Pause. Oh, getting a weird lag. Okay, great. Come on. So, a little bit laggy right now, So I guess I can live stream on YouTube now, okay? All right, back to you cats. You guys can all still hear me and see me. Great. Oh, and there's a spot here for links. Oh, which is the video links. Okay, good. There's a little cameraman app, opening camera. What? There's like a camera person app. Can guests join? This is highly technical. Geez. So you guys are just getting like a first-hand account of me, like, you know, as I'm like navigating my way through. It's like, Bobby, you don't know what you're doing. Go do your thing. At least the redness of this chair. At least I can, you know, tie myself to the vividness of that. We got here screen share. We got chat functions. Is anyone chatting? No, of course not. Okay, so really just today was meant as a technical tester. But why don't I, you know, basically run through what I'm about. So as I mentioned, I'm an emotional intelligence coach, and I work mostly with innovation leaders. So what does that mean? As a group, these tend to be kind of bright, often technically minded people, which to some small or large degree are building up a lot of the soft skills around management and leadership. And let me dig into a bit more kind of how that seems to work, right? Often what they find is that, you know, they have great ideas themselves, but there's the strategy to execution gap. So they feel stuck, installed, and it's not kind of clear why things aren't working. So that's one use cases, one of the problems they tend to have. Another is that they, you know, hopefully have the right people around them, but those people are not as influenced, or at least not as influenced positively as they need to be, right? And this could be your colleagues and your staff, your direct reports, or these could be investors. And particularly if we're dealing with the kind of a high growth startup, having the right rapport with investors is really critical. So that's one other problem. The other thing I would say too is that they have really, whether they consciously realize this or not, they've bought into what I will say is the myth of kind of gritting everything through and just insane work hours and thinking that in this kind of Gary V mentality, I can just burn out. Sorry, I'm looking down here. That's where my camera is. My apologies. They can just burn all their energy, and that's the way to be successful. Just tons of effort, tons of choice, tons of continual choice and effort and focus on this, and that's how you be successful. So, which isn't. I mean, it can be workable in very brief periods, and even as a leadership style, it's a pace-setting leadership style. Which again, it's like for very, temporary sprints, yeah, that might be needed, but overall it can really burn you out. And so a lot of those people that are suffering on the burnout end of things, where they're really overworked, they're not getting the results they need, and that actually becomes a vicious cycle. in this realm where they need to be able to influence people better and to make the right connections, but also intellectually, they're doing something innovative and different. So they need their full, not just kind of raw intelligence and knowledge, but mental nimbleness, creativity, ability to kind of pull new solutions together. And that requires basically an ability to navigate emotions, right? And as you're burning out, you basically can't do that, right? So those tend to be the problems people are dealing with. So if you want better innovation results and better quality of life, that's part of why you would get into this kind of EQ coaching for innovation leaders. So you can imagine there's a lot of individual kind of mental work and different psychometrics to use initially. But then the better ones we can use long term, the more potent ones are dynamics. We can assess you and kind of baseline you at the start, we can track you later on. But really the heart of all this is the coaching, it's the development work. And so someone needs to kind of make that connection if they are an important linchpin in this, and the way they're operating could stand to be better, right? And that's that. So in Myers breaks into things like it's most of my clients, I would say, are NT rational types. And so I'm an ENTP, which means I'm very high energy and very creative, very adaptable in lots of situations. And so the kinds I find that get the best juice out of me are INTJs, which are these slow thinking kind of master strategists. They really want to have bulletproof plans. That's their thing. And then INFJs, which again, they're strategists, but more about people processes. They want a world where no one has to suffer. So they're constantly bit by bit pushing us towards better systems, but they can be very meek and non-confrontational. They have lots of, they have a different slice of leadership problems that they're grappling with. And those are both a reflection of their personalities, the natural strengths, weaknesses that come with it, and thus the leadership arc, the development arc, the EQ development arc that they're going through. Right? That's it. Why don't I throw up a few links for you cats? I will throw up a link if you guys want to share, if you guys want to scan your strengths. So there's a ton of different psychometrics. Some are really brief to do, some take more effort, but a good place to start, I always find, is via character strengths. I'm just gonna throw up that link. Well, do the thing. You get that? Okay, great. So take 10 minutes, go there, look at your character strengths. So what character strengths are, so they would have been developed in the kind of just coming into the 2000s. So I want to say it's early 2000s when they were finishing up the confirmatory research around this. But as opposed to kind of classic ways of approaching personality, which could, particularly when they want to be really boxy, they might even only have 4 boxes or something, that is not prescriptive enough. It's more important to look at the bottom up dimensions, but what character strengths are coming out of is a way to kind of factor load these a whole range of different particular, you could think of it as natural talents or kind of aptitudes in which you're kind of habit-wise prone to operate. So in that way they become things you're naturally good at, but things are also are just easy for you energy-wise, right? And so the good thing is, in some sense, everyone has all the character strength, which is also kind of a way of saying everyone has the capacity to do, make whatever actions, choices, have whatever experiences you want, but you're going to be naturally inclined more towards some, less towards others. So then the rank order of these character strengths, that's basically what the 10-minute assessment does, right? It rank orders them. And then that's the kind of, the rank order of, this is really easy and efficient, and then less so, and then less so. And as you get in the mid ones, okay, you can use them with the less of a thing. And then as you get towards the bottom of the list, I like to call those your shadow strengths, and that would be contrast at the top of the list, which are your signature strengths. Those are your go-to ones you can always use, and you love using them, and they're also probably a part of your identity, right? So so for me, clearly I'm a big nerd because 3 of my top 5 ones are wisdom strengths. So we have creativity, curiosity, and then also good judgment, right? So like new ideas, getting people unstuck, pulling ideas together, being curious about the data, which is going to help us figure out what's effective or not. I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. And then the other 2 is bravery and kindness. I like getting along well with others, which is why I have such an affinity towards teams and bringing together the right team and creating the right team context. And the last one is bravery, which is one of the 4 courage strengths. So bravery is really about quick action. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical in the face of danger. It's more like, I would say a better way to reframe it even more generally would be like an initiative taking kind of quality, right? And that would be contrasted to other courage strengths. So Actually, I'm just going to riff on courage for a little bit here. The other three courage strengths are perseverance, which has more of a sense of toughness or stick-to-itiveness, right? A lot of introverts, a lot of IJs I find have perseverance pretty high up because they're not the big initiative people, but they are closers. They are thorough, right, in the way they approach planning and effort. And the other two remaining courage strengths are honesty. And again, sometimes it takes a tremendous amount of courage to be honest, particularly in the face of threat or even in the military. This is one of the leadership things we're starting to deal with culturally. They framed it as like, so they had this kind of lamplighter analogy, and it was about, if someone were to shine a light on what you were doing or whatever kind of private conversation or whatever decision you were making right now, would you still make it, right? And that way it also kind of shows that being honest, how, I think dangerous might be a strong word, but you might say how risky being honest could be in the wrong circumstances. And that in and of itself means it's a courage strength, right? It takes a lot of effort. The last one, and this might seem, this is probably the oddest for some people to have to read around, actually zest. And so it's like a social zest. I see it as kind of a precursor to leadership, and it's a good way to kind of get people up and moving and doing something, right? But so you could think of like comedians would have high zest, or someone that in some sense, is the life of the party or is able to get people doing something. It's a very zesty trait. In that way, it also shows that when courage is working at its best, it's able to kind of activate and arise energy. So it has a kind of an arousal, a kind of leaning into the situation, being provoked to do something quality. And so, yeah, it's very emblematic of that you can kind of energize people. Yeah. So anyway, it's just one of the tools we used when we're initially trying to get a good snapshot of someone. The other thing I'll say too about this VIA character strengths assessment is that it's just so easy to understand. It is boiled down to such clear language. The report is very clear and easy to read. And there's actually even a youth version of it. So even if you're under 18 and doing this, like if you're still in high school, there's a youth version of this. So they'll knowing your age, they will just send you the youth version of it. It's been validated for youth as well as normal adult usage. So it works either way, right? And it becomes a good way of starting to get into like, what am I naturally good at, and what combination of things do I bring together? Because then when we're actually dealing with things on the team level, and really team coaching, team EQ stuff is really my jam. There's a lot of conditions we're trying to set up, and one of them is, compelling mission, and that has a bit more towards what's the basic, you could say, business case, but reason we're here, way we can add value. But the other, of the 6 conditions, the 3 essential ones are, it's a good compelling mission, but also it's the right people, and it's a real team. So real team has to do with qualities like, is it bounded enough? Is the membership clear and stable enough? Does it seem to be salient enough about why people are here enough that they sense that this is real and legitimate? And so what that would be contrasted to would be teams where it seems that they're arbitrarily, so there's too much of a sense of in and out, so you're not sure if someone's really there or not yet. So think of like when you've ever had a group project, right? You have 4 or 5 people, but one person's never there, and technically they're on the report, but you guys, like all the real people who are switching on, like, yeah, Jimmy's not really on the team, but whatever, like we'll put his name on the report, but internally we all know Jimmy didn't learn anything, didn't do anything, whatever. That would be an example of that. And then so the third condition, the third of the essential conditions is right people, and that's where you really get into, well, HR wise, you would call these selection and assessment issues, right? And educationally, training wise, you could think of it as like, do they have the right skills or background in the right places? More psychometrically, I would say, like, do these people have the cognitive capacity, the kind of the lexical, the reasoning, the various kind of generalizable competencies, or in this case, you might say the EQ competencies to make this work, right? The good thing is some of these soft skills we can develop, but some of them, particularly as we're dealing with innovation stuff, you want to have coming into it, right? It's not like you're going to take everyone from being, oh, you have a math background, great, I'm just going to teach you to do Python programming and you're going to make all this software. It's like, oh, I'm not your Python programmer, or whatever the thing is. Oh, great, I have a background in management, great. We're just going to teach you how to do, I don't know, some long-winded, complicated financial analysis forecast, and you're like, no, I just do monthly budgets or whatever. So that starts to tap into the right talent basis and hopefully the right competencies and expertise coming into it. They have a reasonable chance of doing this. And then the other three factors you're then trying to build up, the other three, what they would call enabling or supporting factors are. So I guess one of them is support, which is a broad catch-all term for like, do they have the space and resources that they can meet? Do they have the right kind of tools, subscriptions, software assets, physical assets needed? Can they pull in the right people in a timely sense so that they can get support that's needed or like information needed, right? Another one is structure, and that has to do with, so one of the things we hear all the time now is people are talking about agile and going agile and how the various agile teams work. And also agile has come out of just the IT to all kinds of things. There are agile sales and agile marketing teams. I think a lot of here in Canada, a lot of the big five banks are trying to shift towards agile, and almost like all sectors are definitely getting impacted by this, and rightly so. So anyway, so that starts to tap into the structure issue. There's a way of operating. Is it clear and workable? How much are we kind of trading off kind of short-term kind of velocity and capacity versus kind of more thorough quality control, or all sorts of pieces? Is there a way that we can saliently organize our work? Part of that also has to do with, can we break things down to specific work tasks and people that are accountable and responsible for that a cycle of workflow can happen? Which is kind of the difference between high level saying, great, here's a mission, here's the right people, which is to say, here's a slice of work. We've decided that you're going to get this slice, and so-and-so's going to get this slice, and I'm going to get that slice, and we're going to do these things, and here's how this is going to operate. So that all falls under the structure piece. And the last one is team coaching, which I think in that sense is just trying to bring out the best of the team, but it starts to tap into the long-term, longitudinal change management aspect, that you're all trying to get better, and there is a change capacity, a readiness for change, competency that you're trying to build up over time. And that ultimately is what allows you to not just grow, but adapt to other situations, right? And so it's, in some sense, you could think of it long-term as this kind of risk management resource. To what degree is the team growing and becoming better and able to take on new challenges and adapt to those challenges well? And so actually, I was just reading an article last night about RFPs, and it was, so a lot of people hate on RFPs, and I'm still on the fence about it. I think generally the RFP process, because it leans towards inefficient bureaucracy, I don't think it's a great process. One reason I particularly hate it is that a lot of times RFP process, because it hides and dances around price, it is a long-winded way to essentially still commodify industry. So, for all of its use of kind of 50-page documents and big long-winded supposed requirements and details and even parameters about how you have to work. I remember looking at some government RFP last month, and I think only a third of it was the actual requirements, and the other 2/3 were all these long-winded parameters about how you're able to bid and how tenders work. It was just like, wait a minute, 10 pages of details and 30 pages of parameters? Wonky. Anyway, so where was I going with the RFP end of things? RFPs, structuring work, clear outcomes. Yeah, you can see that it doesn't help with structure, but because they often dance around the price point issue, that's one of the ways that RFPs can still become the downhill slide of commodification of work, right? Yeah, but anyway, I'm sure that there's lots of thoughts on that. And I'm sure that for people that actually do work in medium and large enterprise organizations, they feel firsthand the complexity of procurement, right? Yeah, it must be hard. I mean, this also kind of shows why there are shifts towards not insourcing, I guess, so it's not project outsourcing, it's not big project outsourcing, nor is it insourcing of full-time staff talent, it's a casualization, right? So, and I'm not sure if this is still accurate, but as of 5 years ago and beyond, one stat I heard is that Google, Facebook, and basically all the large tech firms you've probably heard of, they have about 1/3 core full-time staff, and about 2/3, I don't think it was necessarily part-time staff, but it was like freelancing and kind of brought on staff. So my sense of it is that it's a combination of full and part-time, but it's on demand work, right? So they have this added kind of overflow of people they can pull in. And I think that's probably more, and if you can do that well, and you've kind of put your effort on the front end to make sure that that is feasible, these people are able to do the job, back to the conditions, that this is right people, and then I guess real team, you could think of that starting to come into an engagement end of things. So maybe they're not all engaged, maybe some of them better are. That's probably a better way to handle things as opposed to the big project, the notion of kind of RFPs and bidding wars. But you know what, that's a whole other topic, and that's not really my focus for today. Anyway, back to emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? A lot of people misunderstand it. So the name people generally hear when you think about emotional intelligence is Daniel Goleman. And I would actually say Goleman is a great promoter, a popularizer of emotional intelligence. He's, I think if you look at it, it's not so much that he's been a great researcher, but he's pulled together other people's great research. And he's made that his talking point issue since the mid-late 90s, right? 20 years now. And yeah, so now he's getting a little long in the tooth, and I'm sure there's ways that they're reviving that. But I would actually say that what Goleman has been great at is clarifying the value props of the different ways emotional intelligence adds value, particularly not just to our personal life, but our professional, our work life. Right? And so I remember some of the things, and there's different HBR, different other articles that help recap this. And so he creates this kind of 2x2 dyad in terms of, it's helping with self and other, and both in terms of an awareness, and then maybe he calls it an application or execution end, right? And so some of the facets of emotional intelligence dealing with are like, first of all, am I aware of what I'm feeling and experience of what's going on inside me? And then from a self-management to self-execution standpoint, it's like, to what degree can I, you could think of it as discipline myself? Can I self-regulate is probably a much healthier term, right? In the EQ model I'm trained in, which I'll get into in a sec, that would probably fall closer to applying consequential thinking, which is not just that you can understand risk and reward and plan for longer time scales, but you have the self-discipline to follow through on that, right? Because you're acting in your own long-term best interest, and that is, in some sense, is a kind of engagement in an emotional focus skill, right? And then Goleman will also point out, okay, well then there's kind of other awareness and then other applications. So the other awareness has to do with things like empathy, or you could think of it as like reading context a bit better, things like that. Understanding what people's kind of needs are. And then in the application end, I think you start to get into things like presence or authenticity, or words you'll hear around here. So some of these in some sense are dance-frame notions of influence. And then anything else that has to do with dealing with others, right? And you can see how some of this starts to become mashed together. There's another EQ competency called navigate emotions. It's one of the ones that I'm pretty good at because of my mental nimbleness, my creativity, my curiosity. And what that kind of is your ability to stay resourceful and effective, your ability to keep pulling in information, keep coming up with effective solutions, despite challenge or setback, or I often think of it as despite having your agenda jettisoned. The plan you thought you were coming in with is now out the window. Things have shifted. Can you remain effective, right? And that is both a kind of self and other skill, because it's a self skill that has to, in some sense, to do with your ability to navigate around the shifting emotions of the situation of the room. It's there's a cognitive skill in terms of your mental agility or mental composure, right? But the outer part of the skill is you're normally using this in some sort of business brainstorming, business analysis, kind of what new innovations are possible, what new projects and solutions are possible, end of things. So I often find the application of it is a very social one, because it's like, let's do some win-win problem solving and let's keep doing it well, right? And so that, anyway, so you could say that that's an other skill, because that tends to be the application of it, but it also starts to reflect back on this kind of internal application of this thing you can implement, right? Anyway, so that's kind of Goleman's slice on things. But why don't the next time I do this, I'll show you guys the 6 seconds EQ models of the SAY model, survey of emotional intelligence. That's what it's called. So the 3 main domains it's dealing with are the self-awareness domain. The largest one is this, they call it the choosing yourself, but it's this applied tactical domain of EQ. And then the last one is this motivational domain. And that's dealing with things like, yes, your empathy, but also particularly something called noble purpose. And that's, of the 8 competencies, that's probably the hardest to cultivate, because it is just a very nuanced magic circle of a healthy sense of looking at your own identity, but how you help and serve and add value to others, and the larger kind of purpose or impact that's a part of. And can you wrap all of that up so on a daily basis you're connected to something larger than yourself? I actually, one of the things I see again and again with professionals, so back to innovation leaders, this is maybe less towards innovation leaders, they probably struggle in some other ways, but I would say classic professional services people is that they're effective. So this is another thing, not the 8 EQ competencies, but what we can then look at is a bit more in terms of performance and results is for what they'll call success factors. There's actually a few more we can tap into if needed, but you'll classically, when I'm looking at professional services people, you'll see really good effectiveness. They can get good results, and that's composed of their decision making and their ability to influence others, right? So they can get pretty good results when needed. Normally, I would say the more intellectual introverted someone is, the more they're a better decision maker, but they're not sufficiently influential, which is why they get into gaps where they feel like people aren't listening to them, or they're somehow not getting the respect they feel they're due, right? So about the other success factors, you know, for these professional services people, their relationships are okay, not great. They're not as happy as what they could be. They're kind of getting along, but the areas that really suffer are their health and well-being, and then their quality of life, which is dealing with things like basically how accomplished do you feel, and how satisfied are you, right? And it's so. In that way, you might say, well, how does that relate to noble purpose, Bobby? Well, here's how. Have you ever known a professional which, despite their supposed intelligence and expertise and ability to get good results, never seemed happy or satisfied with what they were doing? And that also continually felt like they needed to spend a ton of energy. If I don't work 68-hour work weeks, what's going to happen? And that could be an explicit, like I have a boss breathing down my neck and I'm axed the first time I drop the ball, or it could be more of a subtle sense of competition and status, like, you know, if I'm not always in my A game, something is going to collapse. It can even often come through a more noble-hearted but misguided sense of heroism of, like, you know, no one else could possibly do it. I'm needed for everything, which is another bad habit managers can get into, where they create a bottleneck around themselves, partly because they don't know how to train others, partly because they're not in the habit of wanting to delegate, which also requires not just a lot of clarity and precision in what the task is, but a lot of trust and building up others, right? And there's all sorts of other sloppy leadership skills going on there, right? There was literally someone that I talked to yesterday, right? This person, PhD level in the research background, working on a really cool product, but it's been a very long time, over a decade, and the constant lens of it is something like, you know, because I think this is all good, justified research, therefore I am enabled to be as slow, inefficient, control freaky, uninterested, delegate as much as possible, because somehow the more I do that, I'm just ensuring quality, as opposed to a bit more well-rounded attitude, which is that, you know, am I truly building something people want? Is there, I continually have these capacity problems. Is there a way I can bring others in and boost my capacity? You know, have I misunderstood the nature of how people want to use this? Am I, you know, how am I setting unreasonable expectations for myself in terms of the here or there? So, you know, it's a simple thing. You know, one of the habits they train you when you start to get into startups and making innovative products is the habit of thinking and the notion of an MVP, a minimum viable product, because they know that, you know, the big full dose of what you're thinking, whether you even realize it or not, it's way far out, and you're continually trying to scale it down to something which is not just faster and more resource feasible, but something that can also immediately get traction and not only get you resources, but I would even say the big long-term value is users and feedback on how things are going, so you can make something better, right? And so this is critical, and there's lots of ways that you can get in your own way there. And I'm not saying you don't need some product to do that, but that in some sense is it's a mindset. And it's weird. One thing I will say, in that, so, you know, my undergrad trainings were in arts and science and a bunch of different disciplines, psychology, computer science, a bunch of different other arts and sciences across the board. And the, you know, business skills within, I say later from a management level, it's not like, I mean, so they're trying to make you a generalist. So it's a bucket of all these little tiny skills, but it's not like they're that technical. Business gets a bad rap in the sense of it starts to become codified for this is around profit. You hate people and it's about profit. And I think a much fairer way to think about this, particularly in terms of the here to there, is that business is around feasibility. You're dealing with finite things. You're dealing with finite time. You're dealing with finite people, a finite amount of people and capacity. You're dealing with kind of emerging market trends. And so there's this kind of time question about how much time will it take to get to market to do this, and how differentiated in that market is it? How unique is it, right? And these are all kind of feasibility questions. Even when you're dealing with one-on-one in relation to kind of partnerships or how you get things out, like that is definitely a mindset, and that requires, back to EQ skills, requires a lot of navigating emotions, requires a lot of empathizing empathy, so that you can actually sense what other people are feeling and forge win-win solutions. I will say that's one thing I find with some people that are not used to high-level business sales, high-level business partnership, because they're used to very low-level kind of retail and kind of low-level business service sales. And it's like, in some way, it's like, yes or no. Do you want to buy this widget? Do you want to buy this service? Do you want to buy this monthly thing? But as you get on the high end of what's possible and doing joint projects together, and really, because some of your early clients those early adopters, it'll feel, it'll be closer to one pilot projects, but to these people in some sense will kind of make or break the company. So these are very strategically very important. And they're also going to help you refine things like your business model, your pricing model, right? So these are critically important things. And so to see someone, in project manager terms, we would say triple constraints, right? That is so lopsided towards one and sacking the others, it's mind-boggling. It's also really, I would say, self-destructive. There are some other startup managers, startup founders I've seen as well, and so the gap they fall into as you become obsessed with, I'll say, efficiency or quality. They often are using a lens like that. What they actually, first of all, it's a stress cycle. They're under-resourced. And so implicitly, it's like, I have to operate this lean and light and kind of low cost or else I'm going to die, which might be true, right? But they lose sight of any sense of growth, any sense of risk, and they're in this self-sabotaging and self-reinforcing mode where they're like, I'm the only person that can do anything. Everything else is ineffective, and everything must come through me. And it's very painful to watch, but it's particularly very painful to try to help them in any sense, because the attitude they kind of adopt is that don't confuse me with data, don't try to help me in any way I haven't conceived before. The only kind of help I want is slavery and serfdom, and even that has a tone of like yes or no. Well, do you want to? Are you willing to kind of buy into that? And that could be slow or long term, right? We've probably known lots of founders in the startup end of things which want free labor, and that's wanting free labor for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years are all very different things, right? Some of them, it's an efficiency game of like they can get you at a really cheap, affordable price point, which often doesn't serve others because it's not really a win-win. It's not fair to them. But I would actually say the more common one, and really what could be a much more subversive and destructive to people one, is the notion that this is such a good-hearted, noble cause. It might even be a nonprofit or a charity, but it is so good in terms of how it's going to just positively transform the world. I need you to give this to me, right? So at least with the kind of for-profit minded founders, they know that there's this kind of risk-reward trade-off, and there's a profit motive, so they can be upfront about that, which also means they're not going to have as many unreasonable asks. There's lots too, which their startup is in that nonprofit charity end of things. And so it has this very assumptive, zealous thing of just like, I have this great cause and it's going to transform the world. And, you need to give me free energy to be part of it. And it can be very lopsided. Anyway, so these are just one of the number of ways that leaders can become out of balance, right? It would be a good point for next time is I'll bring up, I don't think it's the authentic leadership model. I think it's the ethical leadership model. And it tries to create this kind of compass in 4 directions. And so I'll try to find a way to kind of map that out and show it to you guys. Because best case scenario, what it's trying to show, and I'll give you a snapshot of it, is if I remember correctly, it's trying to show kind of short-term kind of value value delivery, which I guess has to do with so customers on one end, and and externally it would be customers or other stakeholders. Internally it would be staff, would be your kind of people focus. So is that right? And then the other thing would be kind of the current quality, the current way of approaching service and value delivery, and then the kind of long-term change. Think of it as like also like market adaptation and differentiation. You need all of these, right? And the more important thing is to be able to sense when you're off balance, right? So I know there are people who like startups, but then maybe they're public sector, or maybe they're kind of professors that work in some of these areas. And also one of the ways they tend to go towards it, because they see themselves about enabling others, is they become kind of unable to call a spade a spade. And so the notion of the quality of what they're doing, or the market trendiness, the differentiation starts to suffer because they because they become so, you might say, over interested. It's an overused focus. It's an imbalanced focus on the internal people going through their system, or sometimes it's an outer stakeholder, right? Various social nonprofit programs can get in bad habits where there's some manna from heaven, there's some financial patron stakeholder getting money from, and it becomes more than about this, bluntly, kind of a circle jerk of what KPIs they need to kind of cook up to kind of self-affirm that they're doing that. But in doing that, their actual ability to deliver value and service weakens, but particularly I would say their ability to adapt over time. There stops being anything really innovative and differentiating and improving over time about how they're adding value, and that essentially just puts them into this kind of outsourced service program kind of end of things, which is so it might be stable. It's certainly not growth oriented. That may be actually one of the key critical things, which I actually think differentiates innovation leaders, innovative startups at their heart, is that by their nature, there's something growth oriented, and that's not just growth in some market sense of wanting profit, but they have a big idea which has the potential to scale. Or I think Peter Thiel would use, or Thiel, however he pronounces his last name, would use the term like intensive growth. There's something new and inventive going on, which allows new things to happen. And then the extensive part of it is how many places you can scale and extend that to, right? Yeah. So you know what? I've been riffing on this stuff for a while. This was kind of a technical test anyway. Why don't we just, so to recap there's that VIA character strength assessment. You can follow that link to go check out yours. It just takes 10 minutes. I totally recommend it. If you do that, there's a couple more psychometrics I can send you as well. And then we can also reach out and let me know if you're interested in a gift session of coaching. So I will say it's not a fit for everyone, but if it is a fit for you, I'd love to talk with you. Why don't I also give you the Talent Edge website? Talent Edge website. Bam. 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 Cool. Got the Talent Edge website up. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Why don't I give him a LinkedIn? Sorry if I seem a little kind of squirrely and movie right now. It's because I need to use the washroom. That coffee is catching up with me. So pull up that LinkedIn. So it's just Robert-O. Robert-O. So bam. And the other thing I think I'll do is that I know I ask this all the time, and hey, do you have any topics you want me to talk about, questions you want to ask? I love that stuff. I love that stuff. So as an ENTP, it's not just that I love ideas and I'm curious about ideas, but the P part, I'm so adaptable and kind of opportunistic to adapt to what's out there, is that I love when I get to kind of dance with some other ideas or energy. So like, I'm not a great orator, soliloquy person. I'm a great kind of debater, adapter, ideas explorer. So I can't wait to get more into that. Love it. So you know what I should do? I should put the part of the website where, so currently in the website, there's a front landing page, there's a part where it says connect, there's a part where, again, it's directing you to, go take 10 minutes to scan your strengths. I'll have some part where I can actually collect some of your topics and feedback, because I love that stuff. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you're into. I want to see how EQ relates to the stuff you're doing. And really that's part of my battle. So really it's like, I want to hear about the cool stuff you're doing and the challenges of it, and see how I can weave EQ into all of that. Because yeah, if you get that development battle right, that's the gift that keeps on giving, right? I mean, it's a bit, obviously, you know, an ancient aphorism, but you know, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything, right? And so experientially making sure that you can bring all these parts of your life together, that you're not creating a kind of a lopsided trade-off where you're kind of, I see this all the time, people almost in some sense admitting that it's like, listen, I won't be healthy, I won't really be happy, I won't have all the parts, you know, I won't have all the kind of people and hobbies and things in my life that I want. But you know, if I can just do a job, and maybe even a very profitable job, you know, maybe I'm a high-end engineer or this or that or doctor or whatever the hell it is, you know, that'll just cover everything. And it's like, well, no, it won't. And on some level, you kind of know that. And so the opposite of having, you know, one stat really high and everything else really low, how do I become, you know, and in a very kind of, you know, econometrics by econometrics, but you know, it's like psychometric by psychometric. It's like, is there a way I could boost these other ones up, and what would it mean to kind of do that a bit more moderately, or you could even think of it as efficiently. I will say one efficiency thing in the tribal leadership model, right? So I think there's another video where I talk about this, but I'll get into this later. You know, level 2, level 3 is an arc, and I would say that's really the arc that Jordan Peterson is tapping into. Choose something, put effort in, you can be effective. Well, and Gary Vee, that's his thing. Oh, just work yourself to death for 18 hours a day. Thanks, Gary. Whatever. And you know what? If that was in contrast to like do nothing, I don't know what to do, I don't know what choices or what I should put my will towards. Yeah, that's relatively a step up, right? But the real next thing, the real efficiency of how to work smarter is it's a whole lot of things about what am I uniquely good at, how do I work better with others, and then the mental agility, the kind of market reading adaptability to be like, what is a tremendous way I can add value to doing this, right? And that is really the level 3 to 4 arc. But there's a way I can work efficiency by collaborating, by having better EQ, by having better resilience. And then I'm not in a mad rush to try to bang out this next product or hit my next sales quota, but then I'm leveraging a bunch of different people with the right strength to do something awesome and amazing, which hopefully adds even longer lasting value. And that is so rich and awesome. One of the things I find about that too is, you know, you think it's going to be just around the outcome, the task performance, right? And that is one part of it. But even when you look at the team diagnostic survey, the 3 final, you know, outcomes at the end you're looking for is, yeah, how's my task performance? I think I'd like to get that up. But what's the quality of my group processes? Which is also going to relate to like, am I adapting to things over time? Are we working well? Is this efficient? And then the last one is, are my members satisfied? Do people want to be part of that group? And when you start hitting that last one particularly, it's like that group vibe starts to really energize everyone. And it's like the group is trying to find new missions and reinvigorate themselves just because they know they get on well and they work efficiently and they love working together. And it's like, great, let's find some new missions. And like, that's a jammy spot to be in. Love it. It's so good. Yeah, we're all gunning for that, right? Anyway, I think that's enough for now. For a technical tester live stream, I've babbled on for 40 plus minutes, so my apologies. Visit the Talent Edge website, www.talentedge.ca. I hope to hear from you cats soon. I hope in retrospect, I don't regret doing this sloppy first live broadcast. I love you guys. See you later. Deactivate.